I wanted to start off first, just honestly, it's just awesome to be up here again, and I am just completely and totally grateful. You know, starting the company back in 2002, and standing in the back of the room and seeing how many people are here, and the great speakers that we have and the great leaders we have in the organization. It's just, you know, it almost tears you up a little bit when you remember kind of where you came from. And I wanted to start by doing a little bit of that. Todd and Stephanie and Sandy, could you come up here? So I don't remember exactly what year it was, but we used to do these as sales kickoffs. They used to just be sales kickoffs. We'd bring the Trace 3 team out back when we had like 60 or 70 people. And I think Sandy came up with the idea like, hey, Moron, why don't we bring clients to this? Like it would be neat to actually bring clients to it so that all the things that we're trying to teach our teams, we also could be talking to our clients about and getting their feedback on what direction we should go. So I would love to have a round of applause for Sandy. This is, in a lot of ways, your baby, right? It's super cool. And then Todd and Stephanie really like, I mean, when we started this, I think literally we were just standing on the carpet, you know, and you see this staging and you see the AV and all the production, like, you two, we always like give you this like toast, you know, the night before we went to dinner and stuff last night and had fun, but you guys really have created something that the whole industry looks at now, and it's pretty incredible, and for all three of you, I'm just super grateful for what you've created, so thank you. Okay, I'm done embarrassing you. All right, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Hayes. I used to be the CEO of Trace 3, and everybody asks me all the time. They're like, all right, so you know you've gone to start something else, and I started this other company, Pop, that I'll talk about a little bit. Was it hard? You know, I don't think I've been on stage since I stepped down to talk just kind of about generalities and stuff. I was talking last year specifically about Pop. And everyone is always asking, is it hard? And I used to kind of compare it to, you know, when you leave the company that you founded, it's like sending your kid to college, and you just pray they're not going to get drunk and like wake up in a snowbank and drop out of school like someone I know did. But no, I stayed in school though. And when we found Tyler, it was kind of cool. I found Tyler probably 3 or 4 years before he actually came on, and I saw him speak once. And you guys all have listened to him speak hopefully a couple times now, but you saw him today. And the wisdom that Tyler has in that brain of his is pretty incredible. And it's a little bit weird because you'd say, oh, well, Hayes, you know, founded the company. Maybe he's the one, the smart one that has all the ideas. And, you know, he brought Tyler in. And Tyler, to me, is like a mentor of mine. We talk every Friday, like at 10 o'clock, and it's supposed to be 10 to 11, and then Tyler gets going, and it's like 10 to 12. But it really is, for me, those conversations I have with him, they make me better. And, you know, I stepped out of Trace 3, and I think when I was listening to Greg talk about essentialism, I'm one of those people that's always doing all of these different things. Tyler came in with a focus on what it was going to take to make this company great, to get the clients the highest level of value they could possibly get, to get the employees at a pay level that's like unrivaled in the industry so that we can attract talent. I just think, you know, handing it over to Tyler and the team that he picked to put around him, no, it's not nerve-wracking at all. It's awesome. In fact, you know, the company's gone from 400 million to over 500 million in sales. Net income tripled. And my board at Pop, the company I'm running now, I said, yeah, Trace 3 is going so great since I stepped down. Tyler's just killing it. And they were like, how long do you think you'll be at Pop? Which is cold. It's cold. So, Tyler, I'd love to have a round of applause for you. You've done an incredible job, and thank you. By the way, that joke about me stepping down, that was real. That was real life. It was really sad. So I'm going to talk about minimum viable stuff. I'm going to, you know, go through this as best I can and try not to bore you guys. I know I'm the last speaker of the day. But this is kind of me barfing on you everything that I've learned in the last 2 years. When I was thinking about what Greg was saying about essentialism, I really felt that I kind of had a calling that Trace 3 was in good hands. It had great management. It had really strong people at just about every level. But there was this problem that I really wanted to go and try and solve. And MVS, in a lot of ways, is the methodology that I put together to try to attack it. So before I start, I thought I would show you this gorgeous lady. So last week, I was in Texas, and it was my mom's 70th birthday, which is cool. That's not my mom. This was 70's cool, right? Like, how many of us, like, I hope I can make it to 70. That'd be awesome. And this is my grandma who just turned 98 last month. Yeah. So I'm sitting talking to her, and the funny thing was, like, on this couch picture, we had to take like 12 of these pictures, because when I was sitting up straight, it's like she just keeps shrinking, and she's so tiny, I look like a giant, and I'm not even 6 foot, so I had to like squat way down and get next to her, and she doesn't, 98, she doesn't have Alzheimer's, she's got great health and everything, but she doesn't always remember everything, and I don't see her all that much because she's out in Texas. So I went out, and I was talking to her, and I was like, hi, I'm Hayes, and she like kind of looked at me, and I have my siblings with me. There's 4 of us, so she's like getting slammed with all these people she never sees. And I was like, yeah, I'm your grandson. I have, 4 children that are your great-grandchildren. So excited to see you, and we're talking to her, and I was like, this is your daughter, Sue, who is my mom. And she's like, I know who Sue is. And I was like, okay, well, I'm out here because my mom just turned 70. Like, what does it feel like to have, could you imagine having one of your kids turn 70 and you're there to see it? That's crazy. Like, I have an 11 to 3, I have 4 kids. 70 is like not, I can't even imagine that. Like, she just turned 70, and she looked, and she does that sweet grandma thing, and she like smiles at my mom, and she's like, oh, happy birthday, honey. And I was like, okay, grandma, she looks pretty good for 70, right? And my grandma just stone cold looks at me, and she goes, you should have seen me at 70. And literally, like, everybody just started cracking up. I'm like, you still got it. I'm like, I posted that on Instagram, and everybody's like, now I know where Hayes gets it, right? She's just sassy. So I actually pulled out my phone, because you never know if that's going to be the last time you see someone, right, at that age. So I pulled out my phone, and I did, like, the reverse selfie thing, and I'm doing a video of her and I call her Momo. I'm like, Momo, I'd love to hear from you, like, from your childhood, or, it's 100 years ago, from your childhood or your, adolescence, like, what are the things that, like, really stand out in your mind as big events in your life? And her face darkened a little bit, and she said, well, I remember when I was 12 years old, I remember holding my father's hand when he died. She had, back then, he got stabbed in a convenience store. She was holding his hand. She had an IV in her arm, going straight to him, doing a blood transfusion for him. And she held his hand as he died. And she said how she remembered her 9-year-old sister. Both her parents died before she was 16, and she was of 7 siblings, and they all got split up. And it was her and the youngest sister got put with one of the aunts. That's the cool thing about the South, is when tragedy strikes, like, everyone in the South just piles on and helps. So all the aunts and uncles took all the kids. And she said the other thing I remember is when my little sister that I lived with, the only one she lived with out of the 7, she died of appendicitis, or appendix burst, when she was like, the little sister was like 9. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And this is a woman that's really not remembering that much. She can't remember who I am. But when I ask, what do you remember from being a kid, or from growing up, these things, I mean, they just started pouring out of her. How she met her first husband, what an amazing man he was, and how they grew up on a farm and had all the kids on the farm. And then their second husband, who was an amazing man, is the only grandfather I knew. And she was going through all this stuff, and I couldn't help but think, as I'm sitting on this couch with her, I wonder what I'll say. I wonder what you'd say. And it was super cute, too, because, you think about what the technology was then versus now. When I did the selfie, she, so it's got me and her in the frame, and we're looking, and she's like, what is that? And I was like, well, that's my phone, I'm filming. I said, filming us? I was like, yeah, I'm making a video. And she's like, I look so fat. I was like, Grandma, you're crazy. But I couldn't help but think, like, literally, what would it be that I would be sitting on that couch telling my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren if I was lucky enough to make it that far? And I think when you think about the themes of today, of essentialism, of being brave, like Frank was talking about, act or be acted upon. Those are the things that I think, as we age, the things that we took chances on, the things we took risk on, those are the things that we're going to talk about. Obviously, you're going to have family and loved ones and all those things like immediately came to mind for her. But I kind of want to live that life, and I've been living it the last 2 years. And really what I've found is that the focus is on truth. I am sitting next to this 98-year-old woman who, by the way, says she's 100 because she can't remember. And I was like, if you want to round up, you can. Like at 98, who cares, right? But this is just unfiltered truth that I'm getting from her. There's no need to boast. There's no need to brag. She's just kind of walking you through pieces of her life in a super gorgeous way. And that truth was kind of so beautiful, right? And when I'm going to transition this in a super awkward way to MVS. No? So with MVS, really what I'm trying to do, and really the reason I left Trace 3 and I'm doing what I'm doing now, is I'm on this kind of violent search for truth. I want to get to the bottom of stuff, and I want to understand why things are happening the way they're happening. And there was a ton of frustration as a leader that led me to it. But there was a couple things that I read and that we've had as speakers here at Evolve. How many of you were here when Eric Ries spoke on Lean Startup? It's crazy. That was crazy good. You can applaud for that. That was really good. So I know you're thinking, you're like MVS, MVP, like straight ripoff, right? Straight ripoff. Yeah. So minimum viable product. If you haven't read the book, minimum viable products are what he talks about in Lean Startup. And he talks about before you go and spend all this money creating all these products, what you need to do is you need to go test and test and iterate and test before you spend the money so that when you roll something out, it will work. Well, so I tried that, but everyone was lying to me, right? He's talking about a product and he had these little sample groups, but as a leader, like literally, you go and talk to people and they're scared of you. They don't necessarily want to give you the truth right out of the gate. Like, how do you make them feel safe? So I went and I found Patrick Lencioni, and most of you have heard him speak. How many of you were here for that talk where he came 2 years in a row? That affected me in a big, big way, because what I thought about is, okay, well, Lean Startup is this correct way to build something new, which is really cool. And what does Lencioni talk about so much, and Frank just talked about it? Trust. How do you build trust? Because if you can build trust, then you can get to the truth faster. But if there's apathy and there's no conflict and there's too much goodwill and people won't tell you the truth, well, that's a problem. So basically what I did was I left to start POPin as a crowdsourcing platform that can get to the truth. It's like a platform for truth seeking. That really is what it's about. We are trying to make it safe for people to tell us the truth so that we can make decisions and move forward. And MVS, when I wrap MVS around this, what MVS is the methodology for how you actually can do it, right? But you have to decide something, or else this speech is going to make, it's not even going to matter to you. And how many people have seen this movie? Who knows what it is? And what does he say? You can't handle the truth, right? I remember going to a bank and talking to a CIO, and I was talking to him, and I was like, hey, we ran this POP session. It's a crowdsourcing platform where everyone can anonymously go in and give you feedback. And they can tell you what they think, including that they don't like you and all kinds of stuff. And I talked with the CIO. I was like, wow, a lot of great data in your session. It was really great. He's like, yeah, the owner kind of thinks everybody here is an idiot. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, he doesn't really care what anybody thinks. He's just going to do what he wants to do. And that happens a lot, like a lot more than you would think. So, I put this slide up of can you handle the truth, but MVS, there's 3 steps to it, but the prereq for it is you have to be willing to hear the truth. If you're not willing to hear it, don't even mess with it. You're completely wasting my time and you're wasting your time. And, we heard a lot about these companies today. We heard a ton about them, and there could be all kinds of reasons that they failed. It could be that they had market data. You can consider like market research and market data the truth. It could be that they got so prideful about what they had created that they refused to acknowledge that maybe there was a better way to do it. There could be all kinds of reasons they failed, but I will argue that, especially for some of them up there, the truth was sitting right in front of them, and they just refused to acknowledge on it, or at least refused to act on it. And I've given a speech about, being versus becoming and eating your own babies. By the way, was anybody here for that speech, the being versus becoming speech? So I said, sometimes you got to cannibalize your own products. It's sad. It's like eating your own babies. And 15 people tweeted, Hayes Drumwright says eat babies. Yeah, which I didn't like, but then I thought was funny. So I'll argue that finding the truth means you have to set your ego aside. And I just wrote an article that was about the fundraising I just did for POP. We just raised $6 million, and the article was in Forbes, and it was called How I Almost Screwed Up, raising $6 million. I basically had started a company with Brett and Dave with $100, and we were able to grow the company to up over $400 million in sales, and you start thinking you're pretty smart when you do, and you have a lot of people reinforcing that you're pretty smart. So I go out and I start POP, and I think the goal of what POP's trying to do is totally a hill worth taking, and I feel we have good progress, and we've got good clients, and everything's kind of on track, and I am really pretty connected with the VC community, so I feel pretty good about my odds of raising money, and I go up, and I get a no, and then I get a no, and then I get a maybe, then I get a we'll see, and then, oh, that's really neat, but I'm super busy right now. And I have contacts and mentors that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars that are guiding me on how to raise the money and even what to say. And they're still not giving me the money. And, I remember in the first year that, Tyler was running the business after I had stepped down. He doesn't do everything the way I do it. And I used to really struggle with that. I didn't say that much, but I would struggle with it. What you realize when you step down, or what you realize when you get knocked down, I think Greg said, Gates said success is a horrible teacher, right? You realize that, all of us are flawed. All of us, are special people in our own way, but we're not that special, right? And you can let things kind of go to your head. And when I think about these companies, I kind of think they probably got to the point that they thought their you-know-what didn't stink. They didn't need to hear from everybody, and their egos started to get in the way. So I eventually got 20 no's in trying to raise the money. I stopped counting at 20 because it was seriously depressing, and I called one of my friends that was giving me advice. It was Fu Huang, who started Data Torrent and was the number 5 guy at Yahoo, who I think made 2 phone calls and raised $20 million or something. And he's like, gosh, Hayes, I'm sorry it's so hard for you. But we talked, and he's like, look, this isn't that weird. Not everybody can just raise money, even with all the contacts you have and everything. And he's like, I know how down you are right now. And he was that guy that kind of helped lift me back up and made me just kind of plow through. And literally, it was kind of cool. We did get the money from Nexus and from Greylock. And all of the people that actually put money in, including Enrique at Bain, all of them had said no at one point. So the perseverance through that really helped. But you never kind of forget that lesson that you're just not that big of a deal. You're just not. So for MVS to get started to go through this is really what it's about for me. And I was really debating as I was talking with Tyler about this slide deck, the words I would use on this. But what we're trying to do with this methodology, in a lot of ways, it's very much like MVP, but what I'm doing is applying people to it too. Humble truth seeking for the purpose of moving forward. The words that I was struggling with is I also thought for the purpose of growing. Growing individually, growing as an organization, growing as a group, growing your revenue as a company, moving the business forward. That's really what it's about. POP, MVS, all these things are cool concepts, but the purpose of doing all of these things is to make your company more effective and to grow faster. I want to scale businesses faster. I get very frustrated with mediocrity. I get very frustrated with sitting still. And I want to get to the bottom of things so that we can cut through all the crap and just get stuff done. So there's 3 steps to it, as I said. The first is source and separate. When I get off stage today, probably 7 or 8 people will tell me I gave a great speech. 2 or 3 of those people will then walk over to the cookies and be like, man, I don't have any idea what Hayes was talking about. So that is sourcing, right? We did source, like, hey, you guys came up and they told me it was a great speech. That's terrific. But how do I know whether that's the truth or whether that's goodwill? I wrote an article in Entrepreneur that talks specifically about separating the truth and goodwill, and I won't go too much into that, but if you like that concept, it's a very interesting concept. And I found that in business, you know, let's say, have any of you ever started a business? Even if it's like as simple as like selling gum at school or something like that, right? Like, you start a business, and when you start a business, you go to your friends and your family like, hey, I got this idea, it's super cool, what do you think? And what do they say? Oh, it's pretty neat, you should give it a try. And that's great, you've done sourcing there, but you've got information there. And I'm looking at Chris Laping, who just started his own business, and I remember the conversations we had around this. Literally, like, the next thing to do is say, great, I need 10 grand. All of a sudden, goodwill's out the window, and people are going to start giving you real answers. I remember the second business I ever started, I said I was going to do something, and 3 clients said, I would buy from you. And I'm like, great, set me up as a vendor right now. And all 3 found a reason not to. So what I'm trying to do with MVS is I'm trying to separate the truth from goodwill. I want to make people comfortable enough that they will actually tell me the truth and not fear repercussion, and I want them to have some skin in the game on it, right? The other thing I want to do is, as a leader, let's say this was a town hall, and at the end of the town hall, I'm going to do Q&A. There's going to be 3 people, if we were all at the same company, that are going to stand up, and literally all of you are going to moan and be like, oh, I can't believe that person's talking again, right? Because they're going to get up at the town hall, and they're going to bitch about something, and everybody knows, like, but nobody's going to say anything when they do it. And I, as the leader, am taking what kind of information in? This must be a big problem, right? This person is standing up, and no one is saying that it's not a problem, so this must be a big problem. But what are you all thinking? We don't care about anything this joker's saying. Nothing. But I have no way of knowing that. So the other thing we're trying to do in the first step is I'm trying to separate the vocal minority from the common voice. What you can do with crowdsourcing, which is really cool, if you make it anonymous, it's safe to talk. It's safe to give your feedback because there's no repercussion. If you say something's wrong in your department, your boss doesn't know you said it. You're cool, right? The other thing it does is with voting is it shows me where the masses are, how they're feeling and how that's supported. And if hundreds of people believe with that person that's got the microphone, if they're agreeing with that person that's got the microphone, or if they just think he's a joker. Because when he puts his idea in that nobody likes, it'll sit at the bottom. And as people vote and they like things that go in that are important, they'll rise up to the top. So as a leader, in 2 or 3 days with crowdsourcing, I can know exactly where I stand. Have I sourced the truth? Where are the vocal minority? Where's the common voice? Those things are all great. So I was talking with a client about this that will remain nameless, but it's a very large company. And they came to me and they said, hey, we want to use crowdsourcing and we want to try to roll out a new initiative. We'd like to kind of come up with this thing that they called MVI, Minimum Viable Initiative. And they came up with this sales initiative. There's 800 people in the group and it was called 555. It was book 5 orders, process 5 orders, complete 5 orders. That was the goal. And so the leader said, look, my job is to explain why. So I'm just going to explain why and I'm going to put all the work on the people. And I was like, I like your style. That's good. So he explains why 555 is important. If they can accomplish that as a sales goal, everybody gets their commissions, they get all their capital budget, all these terrific things happen, and even better, it means that the clients had a great experience, right? Because there weren't holdups, things didn't get kicked out of order processing, and the clients are getting what they need. So he explains why, and he said, what I want to do is I want to crowdsource from the top 3 layers of management. I want to crowdsource from them why 555 wouldn't work. Right? Because normally when we make an initiative, it's like 8 really smart people sitting in a boardroom. They got a whiteboard and they're like drawing stuff up and then they just go spend money and roll it out. He's like, I don't want to do that. I want to go to my top 3 layers of management, which is 120 people, and anonymously I want to ask them, don't worry about the department you're in, don't worry which region, there were 7 different regions. Tell me why 555 wouldn't work. What are the roadblocks? Are the process problems? What is it? And they did it. In 3 days, they ran a session, and very clearly, like 10 or 12 things rose to the top of the 100 that went in, that these things will stop 555 in its tracks. And so the leader did something that I never would have thought of. Almost all of MVS was thought of by clients, by the way. It wasn't thought of by us at POP. they're brilliant in how they apply crowdsourcing. He went to them and he has 7 regional directors and he picks 7 of the top 10 items that he thinks are the most important. The leader still has say over that. And he assigns one to each of them, and he did this little social experiment, which was brilliant. He said, all right, I want you guys to go and just, each regional director, you have a problem, go and brainstorm how to solve it. Post-it notes, whatever you want to do, just brainstorm it and come back to me. So they all come back, and he goes, okay, that's great. Who was in the brainstorming session? And immediately the managers are kind of on their heels, like, why is he asking me that? And they're like, well, it's, you know, it was a couple of guys, you know, in my office. And he's like, well, would you say these people are your friends? Or these are people you can't stand that you did the brainstorming with? And they're like, I mean, maybe a mix. He's like, really? He's like, no. I mean, it was kind of my buddies that I did it with, the people I go to lunch with usually. I mean, we kind of talked about it, and we think that this is the right way to solve it. He's like, well, how do you know you're right? I was telling this story to the president of Arrow, Howard. Arrow's a very large distributor that works with Trace3, and we were talking about this. And he was 10 minutes late to my meeting with him. And he started hitting his knee and laughing at this part. And I hadn't even got to the real juice of what I was trying to say. And I was like, why are you laughing? And he's like, well, I was 10 minutes late to this meeting, and I think I know exactly what you're going to say. You're going to say brainstorming with your friends is really stupid. Because as Lencioni taught us, there's no conflict, you're not getting deep. He's like, I'll be honest, I'm 10 minutes late because I was rolling out a new initiative at Arrow, and I had 2 guys that I love and that love me, and I was on a whiteboard railroading them to do what I want. And I was like, yeah, I do that a lot too. And he started laughing. He's like, all right, I'm listening. What's the deal? Well, brainstorming, we found, really isn't super effective. And with crowdsourcing, why don't we brainstorm the solves with thousands of people or hundreds of people instead of just 2 or 3 buddies? And we'll get to deeper, real answers. We'll get to the truth faster. So stage 2 is to validate and refine. So what we did is we took the brainstorming answers from those 7 regional directors, and we actually ran a session, and we put their answers in. And how could we do that? Well, it's anonymous. You don't know. I don't know if that's the 3 guys in charge of the brainstorming session, if that's their ideas, or if that's Frank's ideas, or Joe's ideas, or Fred's ideas. We have no idea. And what we found is not once did the brainstorming ideas, did more than 2 of them ever even make it into the top 10. We basically scientifically proved that these brainstorming sessions that are coming up with the 10 ways to solve a problem in a company, that they're not effective. And I don't know how many of you know this, but 70% of initiatives in corporations fail. And I will argue that the reason they fail is because we are not including a lot of people in how they get rolled out. And is management that's sitting in a conference room, are they the ones that are actually in the trenches rolling the initiative out? Wouldn't it be nice to have some buy-in from the people that actually have to do it, or some say from the people that have to do it on how it gets done? So that's really what we're about here. So let's say, I have an example of another company. Let's say you've already done your sourcing. Let's say your sourcing was an engagement survey or a pulse survey. So I had a company that came to me and said, okay, Hayes, we got a problem. We have identified one of the leaders in our organization to be a problem, and we want to get rid of him. This was HR. But before we do that, we want to validate that he's a bad leader. So they gave me some data, and they said, you know, his communication skills are really, his scores are really low in the pulse surveys, and there's all these issues with him. So we went and we ran a session with his team, and we basically just asked him, why is he getting such low leadership scores on his pulse surveys? And I mean, unanimous, like literally, I've never seen this, like 99 out of 100 people were like, we're overworked. Literally, we are so overworked. 3 people have left the department in the last 8 months, and he has not backfilled any of them, and we have told him over and over and over, and he's doing nothing about it. How many of you would say at some point you had a problem like that with one of your leaders, right? Where you're constantly bringing up something, and they're just doing nothing about it. So we went to the leader, and we showed the leader the data, and he was kind of baffled by it. He's like, wow. I mean, about 3 months ago, this seemed like a big issue, and I talked to these 2 people about why that was occurring, but as they kept complaining about it, I kind of figured they were the vocal minority. So I didn't worry about it that much. clearly, I guess, it is a big issue. So he sits down with his team, and this is what he says to them. As it turns out, the company we are working at is awesome to its people. It has incredible HR policies. We have a leave of absence policy that goes for a year. The 3 people that left our department did not quit. They are on leave of absence. I can't backfill them. There's nothing I can do about that. So what he did is he had an apathetic group that felt they weren't being listened to. He gets this data back, which is the truth of why they're really frustrated, and he gets to sit down with them and, as a leader, explain the constraints upon him. We just did this with Time Warner Cable. We've done it with CoreLogic. It really is interesting. You would think when you're sourcing pain in an organization, like why is this person a bad leader, or what are the problems, that what you need to do is get that data, then stand in front of the group and go ahead and just say yes to everything. We're going to fix it all. But that's actually a really bad judgment call. What you have when you have that data is an opportunity to stand up in front of them and explain what the constraints are on you as a leader, and then go forward and as a group figure out how you're going to solve for them, which is exactly what they did. So I will have to say with MVS, you want to kind of jump right into it, but psychology does matter. As Frank was saying and as Lencioni kind of taught, if you have an apathetic group and there is an us versus them kind of mentality in your organization where departments are not really going to go out of the way to help their leaders, the first things you're going to have to do with crowdsourcing is figure out what their problems are and start to address them. Not fix all of them, but start to address some of them. And that's definitely a caveat to this whole thing. So after you validate, after you go ahead and figure out, in the first part of it, we're going to figure out what the big issues are, what the big ideas are. And then the second part, we're going to validate them. Have we spent any money so far? We haven't. And that's super important. I think one of the things that was the most frustrating to me as a leader was spending so much money on initiatives and then getting 0 traction. Are any of you in the room that have initiatives running in your company, are they getting the kind of traction you want? How many of you would say it's like at 30 or 40% of where it should be? Right? You've got people that are rolling these ideas and these initiatives downhill. I'm writing a book and I'm calling it Barfing Downhill. They're literally just rolling them down on you. And how many of you have got like an extra 40% time to work on some new initiative, right? That you had no say in and had no way to like give any feedback on. I will argue that there's a lot of reasons they fail, but lack of inclusion is a major one. Also, these pulse surveys that come back and say like, communication's a big issue. I mean, you have offsites, you have email, you have town hall meetings, you have text messaging, you have one-on-ones. We are over-communicating to the point that we want to throw up. The problem is the communications are only going one way. It took 3 to 4 hours for us to find out why that department thought they had a bad leader. They just never felt they had a voice to say it before. They never felt safe enough to say it. So we're trying to get to the bottom of that with MVS. And then lastly, this is where we'd actually spend some money. This is where we're going to roll out and iterate. So I thought what I'm going to try to do for the rest of the talk is actually give you examples of it and maybe challenge you to try to act on something for yourself here. So this is the minimum viable initiative. I explained to you what happened on the right side of that slide, which is he sources from the leader explains why, he sources from the 3 tiers of management what the problems will be, and then they validate through the brainstorming and through another session of how to go deep to solve for those problems. And then they roll it out. In no way is the initiative perfect at this point. The goal is not to roll out a perfect initiative. The goal is actually to roll something out for your first test. So we don't spend 6 or 7 months, like Lean Startup would tell us is a huge mistake to do, trying to bake something to perfection before we roll it out. We bake it enough, but what have I done in the right side? I have all of my top 3 tiers of management. All of my middle management is bought off on the play. They made it. It's their ideas. Initiatives go to die in middle management so often. This was a big concept that this client brought to us. It's like, I don't want to include everyone because I don't think the people in the trenches have necessarily the strategic knowledge to form the initiative. So I form it on the right and I roll it out for 3 months. And now I got management backing the hell out of it because it's their initiative. I wait 3 months and then I make another video that I'll play in the app, right? And I say, as the leader, hey, 555, super important. It really matters for all the reasons I said before. Now I want to ask everyone in the trenches, the other 700, 600 people, I'm sure we changed some things we shouldn't have changed. I'm sure some of the stuff that we didn't change, we should have. We'd like to hear from you who are living this every day. What is it that you would like to see us iterate on? And you source from them, and then you go through the process again. And now at the end of it, I have cross-directional buy-in where I've got management bought in, and I have the trenches feeling like they had some say in this thing I'm kind of laying down on them. And the leader that did this got promoted like 4 months later, a bunch of his people under him. The buy-in and the success they're having is pretty incredible. We had Robin and Sven, Robin's one of our outliers, actually use this process as a new leader assimilation process when she took over a new department of 400 people to try to figure out what is the sentiment that I'm inheriting. I'm going to explain what I want to do as a leader, but because sometimes, when the leader before you goes, you don't know what kind of department they were running, what the culture was, what they were dealing with. And so they used it as sentiment analysis to go in and figure out how happy or sad or painful was the organization. And then they start to apply those fixes to that. I'll jam through this next one. In IT, people come and ask us for services all the time, right? Business units come, ask for a service, and you go and try to build a service to support what these other executives want. Have you validated at all with the people using the apps or the services you're rolling out that they want to use it? Have you validated at all what the feature set should be? Or are you doing your small brainstorming groups with 5 or 6 people with a very small sample set and then spending millions of dollars to roll out a service that most people aren't going to use? So that's another one. So I want to jump outside of corporations now. At Trace3, we have this very cool program called a VC briefing. How many of you have gone on a VC briefing? Right? Let's give a round of applause for VC briefings. VC briefings, I thought, were one of the coolest things that Trace3 ever came up with, because it was this, you look at a problem of like, how do you show new tech to people that are so buried and so busy? And VC briefings was like speed dating, one day up in NorCal, meet all the entrepreneurs, super cool, and everybody was just wowed by it. But over time, as we sourced kind of how they were feeling about it and talking to all these various clients, even the flying was painful sometimes, and getting 6 or 7 people out of the office was hard. And when I talked about not being prideful and being able to look at these things, like, I love the VC briefings. Like, they're so cool, and they were so great for the brand. And I had 7 or 8 clients in a row be like, I love them too, but man, getting out of the office for a day is kind of hard. Getting all my VPs out is kind of hard too. So what do you want to do? You want to ignore that. I don't want to listen to that, right? Because I love this baby that we've created. I want to show you this video real quick. Can we show the nucleus video?
Hi, my name is Art Gilliland, and I'm the CEO of Skyport Systems. Skyport Systems gives you an easy and cost-effective way to bring security to every individual workload. Over the last 15 years that I've spent in security, one of the most interesting questions has come more recently from CIOs and CEOs and boards of directors that are now focused on this problem. And that question is, why am I spending so much on security and it's not getting any better? I think the short answer to that question is that the architecture that we're using to protect our environments is flawed. We do one of 2 things. We either build a perimeter around the environment that we're trying to protect, and therefore everything behind that perimeter is receiving lowest common denominator security. Or we bring the security closer to the application of the workload. We add agents or different kinds of workloads sitting right on the system itself. But that damages performance, and so people turn off functionality that's meant to protect. And so what we do at Skyport Systems is we help bring the perimeter, that security perimeter that's really powerful, to the application without damaging the performance of the application, so you can re-platform your environment to be more secure. We believe now is the time to start to consider re-platforming your environment and building security in from the ground up. What Skyport Systems delivers is an environment designed on zero trust. We don't trust the computing infrastructure, we don't trust the network, we don't trust the applications, and we don't trust the users. And so each of those operates independently within a system. Our systems come up, they are guaranteed secure, verified by a third party. You place your applications in that environment, you set policy to those applications, and the policy stays specific to that application. So as the application moves in your environment, the policies follow. If your application goes away, the policies disappear. So while we've created an architecture that could be the way in which computing is built in the future, our customers today are using it for 4 specific use cases. Number 1, they deploy our systems in the DMZ. They re-platform systems like Secure FTP or other applications on our systems. With that, you can see all traffic that's going in and out. You can control whitelist, what it's allowed to do, who it's allowed to talk to. The second use case that our customers focus on are helping to lock down and protect and harden the command and control systems in their environment. These systems tend to be the most attacked, and most of the major breaches that have happened have had Active Directory breaches. So in working with a large technology manufacturer, we were able to lock down their Active Directory in the 25 or 30 locations that they had deployed their systems and give them complete visibility into what it's connecting to, control over what it's talking to and how it was talking, and identify that 3 of their Active Directories had been compromised. Typically in their environment, to set up a server, to set the security policy in the firewall, all of that takes about a day and a half. And we were able to do that in about 30 minutes. The third place our customers use our technology is for remediating and updating out of compliance old or legacy applications. One of the beauties of our system is you can take old application platforms like Windows 2003 along with the applications that are running there and put them exactly the way they are in our compartment. And on the inside, it can speak the languages that it's used to. But outside the compartment, we can upgrade that to speak Kerberos for authentication, or we can speak TLS 1.2 into the internet. So in working with a small medical manufacturer in Texas who had recently failed a HIPAA audit, we helped them upgrade their applications on Windows 2003 and Windows 2008 to a more secure posture. The alternative that they had was they needed to either rewrite this application or re-platform on a new operating system. So upgrading that would have taken an extraordinary amount of time. And all of that replatforming on a Skyport system takes only 30 minutes. The last area and the largest ROI for customers today is in helping them replatform their branch and remote locations. A lot of organizations have lots of different offices. They have a headquarters and a data center, but they also have compute sitting out in the branches. To be able to manage those branches, they not only need to send their servers, but they send a firewall and a proxy and all of the security devices to the site. And to be able to manage and configure all that, they have to send an expert to the site. With a Skyport system, you ship the box to the location. You have to have the expertise to plug it in to the wall and plug it into the network. And all of the underlying system comes online, and then you remotely push your applications to it. And so you can set up and run a system in about 30 minutes, deploying an application with the right policy from your central location. The expertise can stay in your data center and manage all of your remote locations, having 100% visibility into not only what systems are online, what policies are being enforced, but what applications are running there. In working with a couple of financial services organizations to help them optimize their branch locations, we're seeing massive ROI. In fact, what they're telling us is they believe the Skyport systems will save them up to 70% of their branch costs. To give you an example of this, one of the companies spends about $400 million for 2 MPLS lines into each of their branches. With the Skyport systems installed, they believe that they'll be able to eliminate 1 of those immediately and hopefully 2 over time, saving them at least $200 million just on the connectivity alone. So Nucleus members, the question I have for you today is, if you could take your applications and your workloads exactly as they are without having changed the code or the operating systems, move them into secure environments, setting policy on a workload by workload basis, cost effectively and easily, where would you start and what would stop you from replatforming today? Thank you very much.
How many of you have heard of Skyport? It's cool. How many know what the heck I'm trying to show you? So the nucleus was this idea that it could be an evolution of the VC briefing. The VC briefing that I love, right? In 5 minutes, by the way, I think it was like 2 hours of footage to make that 5 minutes. We made it at POPin, but that 5 minutes just gave all of you the problem statement, the solution, 2 or 3 use cases, and then is asking you to collaborate with this entrepreneur. Where do you think I should start? What do you think of my go-to-market strategy? What do you think of the overall kind of argument of what we're taking to market? So when they, Tony talked about foundational success, which has been a huge thing at Trace3 forever. If I was to build a group of CIOs, CTOs, and CDOs, and CISOs that could give feedback to these entrepreneurs, let's say there's 70 to 100 of them in something you'd call the nucleus, and they could make this video, the video plays in the app, and then all of these executives could give feedback to the entrepreneur, have the entrepreneur in the session and answer all their questions about what's going on with the technology. Wouldn't that be more effective than trying over 60 weeks to get 60 CIOs and CTOs to fly up to Northern California to meet with Art? So that's what we did. But the first 10 people told me they thought it was a great idea. So what did I have to do? It's not always ask them for money, right? I'm trying to source whether this is a good idea and separate the truth from goodwill. So I asked them, okay, if you think that this is a good idea, I'm only going to invite 15 people in, and it's some of the people in this room. You are going to have to refer in the rest. And if they don't refer anyone, what do I know? I probably don't have a great idea. We got to 60 people in the group in like 2 weeks. It saves time. I get to see what all my peers think. All of a sudden, they started like showing off on who was getting referred. Like we did it on a Google spreadsheet, and it started with like kind of, mid-sized companies. Then all of a sudden, Nike and Kaiser and, all these huge organizations started to get referred in at the CXO level. And now it's a group of really, really incredibly bright people. The entrepreneur, this is like a dream for them because they get feedback from real buyers. For the executives, it's so great because they actually get to see new tech in a way that doesn't cost them more than 15 minutes, and no one's calling them on sales calls. The CEO can't see who they are, right, in most cases. They get to opt in at the end of a session. On Skyport, I think 30 of the CXOs looked at it, and 22 of them asked to meet with Art after. What's the benefit of that for Trace3? When you get that kind of a hit rate, what is Trace3 trying to do for you guys? Why did we do VC briefings in the first place? We're trying to decide what the products are that are going to be of massive value to you so we can get expertise with our 200 engineers in those products and then deliver them to you. So foundationally, the entrepreneur, the client, and Trace3 all win in that. And what we're doing now that we've gone out and we've tested, and with the group that I've put together, we've validated, all the clients in the room today are going to be invited into Trace3's nucleus. So Trace3 is launching this. You'll get an invite at the end of my talk. You're going to be able to give us your feedback on Skyport and on ScaleArc. That's the one that we just launched today to my group of CIOs and CTOs. And every 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to be showing you technology through this platform to see what you think about it. So as Tyler and Tony and everybody talked about, so you can help guide us to where you see real value so we can build expertise and offload some of that on you. So we've got other examples. Attack the middle, Lincioni, that's our rallying cry at POP. And for attacking the middle, what we've really focused on, like MVI and MVS are like super cool, right? Create initiatives, roll out services, but not all of us do that, right? I mean, there's a lot of us that are in the middle of the organization that are not creating, $20 billion initiatives that we're rolling out across the organization. So we started talking to different department kind of middle managers about what the problems they were dealing with every day were and how we could apply crowdsourcing to that. One of the most simple ones was like building an agenda for a meeting, building an agenda for the offsite. A lot of times we get up as leaders, we have no idea what you want to hear. Why don't you crowdsource it and tell us? Capital budgeting. How do I source what should be in the capital budget, and how do I refine, via criteria voting to figure out whether it's going to make sense and whether we can afford doing it or get it done on time? And then my favorite one is this. So in POP, this is a screenshot of the 2.0 version of the app we're making, and what you have there is we were talking to some HR leaders at like 6 or 7 different companies, and I thought this was like the coolest idea. They said, when I open a rec for someone, I usually get like 70 or 80 applicants at a minimum, and then I've got to narrow those down to like 10 or 15, and then I'll give my hiring manager like 10 of them. But what does the hiring manager get? He gets a LinkedIn, and he gets a resume. And then he's got to try to decide which 3 to bring in. Sometimes if the HR department's super cool, they'll actually narrow it down to 3 with phone interviews all on their own. But what we decided, and the client came up, actually Sandy Salty came up with this because she's super annoying and always has all the good ideas. We actually make a video. We ask all 10 finalists, give them 3 questions that they all have to answer. And you can see in the app, you've got the play button to do their video. You've got a link to their LinkedIn, and you've got a link to their resume. And then you have that star system at the bottom to rate which ones you like best. We will crowdsource the 10 finalists with the hiring managers, or now the whole department, and we can make a decision on which 3 should come in and who we should hire. And if we're doing round robin interviews, we could do a validation session after we interview them and say, hey, this is the kind of feedback I got. Did you guys get the same stuff? What do you think? Or I forgot to ask this question. Did anyone else ask this? And we can do that in the app, and we can make decisions on hiring very quickly. So there's tons of different use cases we can put together on that. But I thought instead of talking about that, it would be cool to make you guys head of product. I joke with my board all the time that with all the use cases and all the things that we're trying to do with MVS and with POP, that I can't go hire like some whippersnapper I can say that, I'm old now, out of Stanford who's like 20 years old that's never lived the problem. The head of product at POP is the person that has lived the problem. Like, why am I so passionate about minimum viable initiatives and rolling out services? Because I've worked at companies where we've wasted so much money on initiatives and services that never got any traction. I've lived that problem. I understand that problem. So I'm trying to solve for that problem. Well, HR knows their problems. IT, you know your problems. If you think about what we did with the nucleus, we knew after talking with thousands of clients that getting exposed to new tech in a way that was effective and efficient was hard for you guys. I'm guessing there's 20 other problems like that. So when you think about what Tyler and everybody talked about today, you could act or you could be acted upon, right? You could want to know the truth or you could bury your head in the sand and decide to do nothing about it. There's things that you guys do probably every day that drive you nuts. And I don't remember exactly how Greg said it, but it was something, Tyler probably remembers it because he's good at that stuff. I don't want to pay anybody. What if you didn't get paid for working hard? Like that, I was cracking up when he said that because I can't stand when people come to me and be like, but I work so hard, I want a raise. I don't give a crap. I don't care how hard anybody works. I care how effective you are. I care how smart you work. That's way more important to me. Results are way more important. So there's things you guys are probably doing every day that you walk right by, a process, a system, the way you've been doing it for the last decade that drives you nuts. I'm going to open a session up for you guys, and this will be with the nucleus email that you get where you guys can go see the new tech. There'll be another session in there under the events tab. Basically, I'd like to know, is there a process or something that you've been doing for decades that if you applied crowdsourcing to it like we did with Presume or we did with the nucleus, that would make it so much more effective, you could get through things so much faster, and you can do what the whole goal of MVS is, right? We could grow and we could scale faster. So I'm going to open that up for you guys. I'd love to see it, and as Tyler and I were talking about this, I want to kind of close with some thoughts. It's super important that you know, like, I'm a very flawed person, right? I'm extremely flawed. There's a lot wrong with me. And a lot. And anybody that works at Trace 3 is probably laughing, right? My initiations I do on new hires, like I'm a little crazy, right? So I have a lot of issues, but there are certain things I'm really good at. Right? Like if you give me a blank whiteboard and you say, hey, let's go make something, then I'll go to that whiteboard and I'll draw for hours and I'll try to create something, and I get a huge kick out of that. The juice that Tyler talks about, I love creating stuff. I love being a strategist. So when you see this, when you say, hey, I want you to be head of product, know this. Not all of you are great at creating stuff from scratch. In fact, I know for a fact, most of you probably, that freaks you out a little bit. But Tyler's got flaws too. Almost everyone in this room has flaws. No one is perfect. What I can tell you is there's value to the people that can put in the new ideas. There's a ton of value to the people that can tell people those are crappy ideas. There's a lot of value to the people that can go in and they see an idea, they have a mind that can improve upon it and iterate it like crazy, but you have a choice, right? You can keep looking at all the problems you're dealing with on a daily basis, and you can walk right by them, or you could figure out what you're good at. You can get involved in solving these problems, either with my tool or in some other way, and you can figure out what you're good at and you can apply yourself. In crowdsourcing, I think the thing I love the most about it is that everybody's got to play. It's not just the creative or the innovator, it's the tactician, the strategist, like the operational person. Everybody's got to play, and I hope that you guys will jump in and that you will give it a shot. And know, you know, nobody's perfect. You're not going to have your stuff always rise to the top. In seeking truth, right, which is what we're trying to do with the platform, the truth might be your idea stinks. And that's okay, right? Because maybe you'll help make the best ideas better. And to close out, I tried to find a couch that looked exactly like the first couch. I think it's close. I want you to give some thought to this. You know, this act or be acted upon, like that story of the bully, which probably is one of my favorite stories that Tyler has ever told. I am so good at imagining bullies. Like, I love it. Like, I'm constantly out there thinking, what's the bully going to be so that I can act before 5 o'clock? Before I have to get in that fight, I want to totally solve the problem so that there is no fight. And I'm always trying to get ahead of it. I left Trace 3 to go work on all these things that would help Trace 3 through POP, that I knew, like, that was my essentialism play. So when I'm sitting on that couch at 98, hopefully, right, I want to tell stories about how I helped so many people, and I encouraged them and built a platform that enabled them to act in a way that was safe, in a way that they could find the truth, and I built methodologies that is my legacy, and that helped that happen. So I hope, as you're thinking about whether you're going to participate in these things or not, you think about what you would be telling your grandkids and your great-grandkids about what you did, and that out of all of today and all the speakers that you've heard, that you don't just go home and do nothing, that really you find it in yourself to be brave and be courageous like Frank was talking about and act. Thank you.